This video is for educational and informational purposes only. All information is based on public sources and news reports. This is not legal advice, not political advice, and does not create any attorney-client relationship. We have no intention to harm or defame any person or organization. Always verify facts from multiple official and reliable sources. Fair use applies to any clips shown. Hey everyone, welcome back to American Politics Today. Today we are diving into something that's making waves across NATO and the US political landscape. It's about Donald Trump, NATO, and a very controversial comment he made about Afghanistan. Did he really say that allies stayed off the front lines? And why are veterans and allies from the UK and Canada outraged? We're going to break this all down in simple words, so you don't have to worry about confusing terms or long political speeches. Stick around because the details are shocking. First, a quick recap. In January 2026, at the Davos World Economic Forum, Trump made comments about NATO allies and the war in Afghanistan. Later, on Fox News, he reiterated some points that caused a stir internationally. Many people, especially veterans from Canada and the UK, took offense. Let's put this in context. Afghanistan was a long, complex war. The US led NATO operations starting in 2001, after the September 11th attacks. Over 20 years, thousands of soldiers from allied nations fought alongside Americans. Specifically, the UK lost 457 soldiers and Canada lost 158. These numbers are not small. They represent families, communities, and lives sacrificed. Now, when Trump commented that allies stayed off the front lines, many veterans and experts were shocked. They argued that this is factually misleading because British and Canadian forces were heavily involved in combat zones. The debate is not just about words, it's about respect, recognition, and trust between NATO allies. Let me explain what Trump actually said. In his Davos speech, he mentioned that the US was carrying a heavy burden in global conflicts and implied that other countries did not contribute enough on the front lines. On Fox News, he repeated that allies often avoided the riskiest positions in Afghanistan. Critics argue this oversimplifies decades of NATO operations. Now, here's the twist. Some people believe Trump's statement was aimed at highlighting defense spending issues within NATO. The US contributes a significant portion of NATO's budget, and Trump has often criticized allies for not meeting the 2% GDP defense spending target, but critics say framing frontline involvement in this way ignores historical realities and sacrifices. Let's dig deeper into what veterans are saying. British and Canadian veterans expressed outrage on social media and in press statements. They emphasized that their troops faced heavy combat, suffered casualties, and made immense sacrifices. The comment feels dismissive to many who risked their lives alongside American forces. Historically, NATO relies on shared commitments. Trust between allies is crucial. If statements like this are repeated or believed without context, it could impact military cooperation and future international missions. Experts say that even perceived disrespect can create tension among allies. Now, here's a simple way to understand it. Imagine you are in a group project and one person says most of the others didn't contribute when, in reality, everyone worked hard and some even took the toughest tasks. That's basically what veterans feel Trump's comment did to NATO partners. It's not just words, it touches on morale, history, and trust. Some political analysts argue this could have consequences for US diplomacy. NATO is a cornerstone of American foreign policy. Undermining trust, even unintentionally, could make allies hesitant in future conflicts. Many experts believe that building alliances is not just about money but mutual respect and acknowledgement. Now, let's talk numbers. The US lost over 2,400 soldiers in Afghanistan. The UK lost 457, Canada 158. Several other NATO countries also suffered casualties. These numbers reflect real human costs. Saying allies stayed off the front lines doesn't capture these realities and can hurt morale. It's also important to understand media coverage. Different outlets reported Trump's comments differently. Fox News highlighted the defense spending angle. International media, especially in the UK and Canada, focused on the disrespect towards soldiers. This shows how the same statement can be interpreted in multiple ways, depending on perspective. Let's pause and look at NATO's current trust situation. Experts say that trust has been tested over the years, not just in Afghanistan but also in conflicts like Iraq, Libya, and Ukraine. Trump's comment adds to a broader conversation about burden sharing. Some allies feel the U.S. expects too much, while Americans sometimes feel allies do not contribute enough. Here's another layer. Public opinion matters. In the U.S., some people agree with Trump's critique of NATO spending. They see it as holding allies accountable. Others see it as unfair to veterans and historical contributions. In Canada and the UK, public sentiment was largely negative, emphasizing respect for troops over political debate. Now, what about the timeline? Trump's comments in January 2026 are part of a series of statements over the years criticizing NATO. He's been vocal about defense spending, saying the U.S. carries a disproportionate burden. But these recent remarks are controversial because they specifically mention frontline combat and casualties. Veterans organizations have weighed in. They issued statements reinforcing that British and Canadian forces were actively engaged in combat zones. They also highlighted training, logistical support, and other non-frontline contributions as vital. This shows that military involvement is complex, not just about who was physically in the front lines. Here's the tricky part. Political figures often use simplifications to make a point. Trump's comment might be aimed at a general audience to underscore defense spending concerns. But simplification can backfire, especially when it touches on sensitive issues like soldiers' lives and sacrifices. Let's break down why this matters for NATO today. Alliances are built on trust. If statements appear to diminish allies' contributions, it can create tension. Future cooperation in joint missions, intelligence sharing, and strategic planning could be impacted. Some people think that even minor remarks can have long-term consequences. In international relations. Now, let's consider American politics. Some experts believe Trump's remarks could energize his base, who agree with his critiques of NATO spending. Others think it could alienate moderate voters who value strong alliances. The balance between appealing domestically and maintaining international credibility is delicate. You might ask, did Trump really insult allies? Well, it depends on interpretation. He did suggest that the U.S. carried a heavier burden and implied others avoided riskier roles. Many veterans and allies perceive this as an insult, but others see it as a commentary on spending and responsibility. Let's also look at Fox News coverage. On the same day, Trump discussed defense spending and frontline contributions. Hosts often framed the comments in the context of fairness and budget accountability. This contrasts with UK and Canadian outlets, which focused on the veteran outrage angle. Media framing plays a big role in perception. Now, here's something interesting. NATO officials have not publicly condemned Trump. They emphasize continued collaboration and mutual goals. This shows that while media coverage highlights tension, official channels often seek to maintain calm and cooperation. Think about it like this. In international relations, words matter. Comments can be taken out of context, amplified, or misunderstood. That's why diplomats are careful with language. Politicians speaking in public forums face the risk of misinterpretation, especially on sensitive historical topics. Another important point is historical record. Data shows British and Canadian troops were heavily involved in combat. The UK led several operations in Helmand Province, facing daily attacks and casualties. Canada also had major combat operations in Kandahar, saying they stayed off the front lines ignores these facts. So why did Trump make these comments now? Some experts think it's strategic. January 2026 is before midterm elections, and NATO criticism resonates with certain voter bases. Highlighting US burden sharing might be aimed at domestic audiences rather than insulting allies intentionally. Let's recap key facts. US led NATO in Afghanistan after 2001. US lost over 2,400 troops. UK lost 457, Canada 158. Trump said allies often avoided front lines. Veterans from UK and Canada disagreed strongly. Experts warn about NATO trust impact. Media framing differs across countries. Here's the human angle. Families of fallen soldiers from UK and Canada felt offended. Veterans argue it minimizes real sacrifices. Recognition of contributions is more than politics, it's about human respect and history. Now, what can we learn from this? When leaders speak about international contributions, accuracy matters. Oversimplification can hurt alliances, morale, and credibility. Neutral analysis shows that words have consequences, even if the intention was to discuss spending or fairness. Let's talk about NATO's future. Allies continue to invest in defense. Some have increased contributions after US pressure. Trust and collaboration remain essential for global security. Misunderstandings or perceived insults could slow joint operations or make coordination harder in crisis situations. Many experts believe this situation is a reminder that communication matters. Public statements are scrutinized globally. Political leaders need to balance domestic messaging with international sensitivity. Now, here's the big reveal. Did Trump really say allies stayed off the front lines? He did make statements implying us carried more risk and effort. The controversy arises because this oversimplifies reality and can be seen as disrespectful to veterans who fought and died in Afghanistan. Interpretation varies, but perception is powerful. Let's put it simply, the words matter, the history matters, and the people involved matter. Allies, veterans, and public perception all intersect here. So what does this mean for you watching this today? It's a lesson in critically evaluating statements, understanding context, and recognizing the human stories behind headlines. It's also a reminder of how alliances like NATO depend on trust, respect, and shared history. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think comments like this affect international alliances? Will it impact us credibility or future NATO cooperation? Do you think domestic political goals justify controversial statements about allies? If you learned something new today, smash that like button, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe with the bell on so you never miss an update. We break down politics in simple, easy to understand ways every week.